Good morning, everyone. Merry Christmas. Thank you for being here today. We are going to start our I got a migraine today. Y'all are going to have to just deal with me and bear with me here for a few minutes so my medicine kicks in. But we are going to call our meeting to order. This is the Suwannee River Water Management District Governing Board meeting and public hearing. We have a new public hearing participation. The meetings are available in person and by the district's YouTube link. Information regarding the link is located on our website at www.myswanneeriver.com. And at this time, beg your pardon?
Turn up your mic. We can't hear you back there.
All right, I will try to do that. Let's see.
We don't have the overhead speakers in here to turn the mics on. That's just for the YouTube session.
Okay, so that's
Okay.
for the online.
Yes, sir. That's for online participation.
All right, well, I will just speak louder. How's that? Is that better for everybody? Okay. All right, so we've called our meeting to order, and at this time, would everyone rise for invocation and pledge?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day, Lord. I also want to thank you for the greatest gift that mankind has ever known, the gift of your Son. Father, we thank you for this season. Father, we ask for your guidance and your wisdom as we proceed with this meeting today. I ask your blessing on staff. They work so hard to prepare for these meetings. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, our meeting has been called to order. It is December 12th, 2023 at 9 a.m. And is there a roll call? Would you do a roll call for us?
Chair John,
Here?
Mr. Key,
Here.
Mr. Schwab,
Here.
Mr. Smith,
Here.
Mr. Sessions,
Here.
Mr. Thompson,
Here.
Mr. Lloyd,
Here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have any amendments to our agenda?
Yes, ma'am, we have one update to the agenda, under Business and Community Services, agenda item number 13, fiscal year 2024-2025 preliminary budget memo.
Thank you, ma'am. At this time, we will open our meeting to public comment. I have quite a few comment cards here. So I'm going to ask that everyone limit their speak or their comments to 3 minutes, and that way everybody will get a chance to comment. Yes.
Madam Chairman, if I may, we do have a noticed action item on the final order number 23-006, the recommended order. You may want to see if those comments are directed toward that. You may want to wait and have them give their comments all at that one time,
Okay.
which is item number 9 under legal counsel.
All right, item number 9 is the final order number 23006, Florida Springs Council versus Seven Springs Water Company and Suwannee River Water Management. If I call your name and you would like to wait until that item, then just please say so, and then I'll call you again at that item number. If you would like to come on up now, that's fine. I have Laura Daly with Gwynn Farms. Would you like to wait until that item or come up? Wait?
I'll wait.
Okay. I do have one written comment that would like to be read at the meeting. Troy, would you like to take care of that for me?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Merry Christmas early. We have one public comment that was submitted to the district from Amy Morey, representing the Bradford Soil and Water Conservation District. The item that she wanted to discuss was the North Florida Regional Water Supply Plan. She requested this be read to the board, so I am going to read this in full. I'm gonna go ahead and apologize a little bit. There are a lot of acronyms in here, so if I stumble over them, you'll understand why. The Bradford Soil and Water Conservation District Board respectfully asks that their comments be read in a meeting and that the item be removed from the consent agenda to the full agenda. The Bradford Soil and Water Conservation District has concerns about the water supply plan process and the NFRWSP final draft. The NFRWSP final draft became available on November 28th, 2023. The BSWCD, as a special district, can only have discussions and take actions in a noticed public meeting, which was scheduled for December 5th, 2023. The BSWCD added a discussion of the NFRWSP to its December 5th, 2023 meeting agenda. It is unreasonable to expect that the 5 BSWCD supervisors could review a 526-page document in 6 days. Concerns about the contents of the NFRWSP final draft. Because of the short review time, the BSWCD focused on the staff responses provided to the comments submitted by the BSWCD on January 31st, 2023 and October 4th, 2023. The BSWCD found that in many cases, the response provided did not address the concerns originally expressed. Because MFLs are such a key component of a water supply plan, the response to BSWCD concerns about the Upper Santa Fe MFL and the failure of the Swanee River Water Management District to establish the MFL for Lake Sampson were very troubling. The process used in the NFRWSP to determine if MFLs are being met appears to be flawed. But in many cases, the response provided to oh gosh, that's terrible. To determine if MFLs are being met appears to be flawed because it fails to relate to the language and process detailed in the rules establishing MFLs. The responses provided about BSWCD concerns about mining water use were also very troubling because the responses seemed to indicate a serious lack of understanding of the mining process being used by Comores along the Trail Ridge. That mining process can extract water that comes from the St. Johns River Water Management District and discharge into the Swanee River Water Management District. The volume of that water is not reported because the districts have not required Comores obtain a consumptive use permit for the dewatering needs for their dry mining operation at Trail Ridge South Mine. Water and tailings cannot be returned to the mine pit as it is being mined. The annual mining reports filed with DEP may provide some information about how serious this issue may be. It will be unfortunate if any positive impacts of the Black Creek project are negated by water withdrawn by Comores mining operations near Black Creek discharge site. And then they have a recommendation. If there is no legal requirement that the NFRWSP be adopted by the 2 water management district governing boards at the December 2023 meeting, the BSWCD would urge the governing board to delay the adoption for 2 months to allow comments on the North Florida Regional Water Supply Plan and possibly address some of the concerns addressed herein.
Thank you very much, Troy. All right, I've got, it looks like, item 17. I've got 2 cards for the Gwynn Farms. If you'd like to speak now, or would you like to both of you wait? Wait, okay. It looks like most everyone else is probably going to want to wait for item number 9. Is there anyone that would like to speak now or wait until that item? Okay, I'll call everybody when we get to number 9. Mary Lee?
Yes.
Do you want to speak on any of these items now or wait and,
I think I want to speak on them now,
Okay.
because it's all, yeah, I'll do that. I'll
Okay.
speak on them now.
all right?
Good morning. It's good to kind of be back and at least see some of you today.
Good morning, it
Been a
has
while.
been.
All right, so, pains me to be here today, by the way, to witness treachery and a battered and befallen freshwater system under your watch and leadership. On today's agenda, number 27, number 9, number 17, I only have 3 minutes to speak. I'm not going to say everything that I have there. The number 27 should be pulled from consent. It would be ridiculous to put a 20-year regional water supply plan on consent. That's something that really needs more discussion, more conservation, changes on how we do anthropogenic development in the Springs heartland on top of the aquifer has to happen now. You guys are at a pivotal change in our whole area up here. We're not ready. We are not ready for the amount of development that's coming, for the amount of humans that are coming, and the Springs can't handle what we're giving it. In terms of number 9, I'm going to talk about it now. 984,000 gallons of water a day represents roughly 11 towns of the size of Fort White. Fort White has issues. You guys are all trying to work on their water issues right now. And you're talking about increasing 100 more homes, about 100 more homes with one of the ERP permits on your agenda, which is, I can't remember the number right now, but it's in there, in the Fort White one. So you're talking about giving away for $115 for 5-year permit now, it was 20, now it's 5. $115, you can get 984,000 gallons of water when you don't even have enough water according to your regional water supply plan, where you're taking away 40% more of the freshwater resources that we have right now, as they exist right now. You're taking that away, only to recharge it with polluted water, which we don't want. We don't want the toxic polluted water that we're seeing in the mining tailings and in the other large water resources in our area that are trying to recharge our freshwater springs. So giving the 984, issuing this permit for the ERP for another 100 people moving into it, the same spring shed. It's the Ginny spring shed. Know that those are the same, including High Springs, including Trenton, including Bell, including Brantford, where all of these people are moving, and you're giving away our water to a bottled water company that's taking it out of the basin. All those housing developments, all the development that we're talking about, it's gonna keep it in the basin, the water, the freshwater resources. So be careful about how we do our planning, the 20-year planning. I agree with the Soil and Water Conservation Board over in Bradford County. You should pull it from consent. You should have more discussions about it. We have to change how we're developing today. We can't be sustainable the way that we're at this moment in time. Good luck.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, is there anyone else that would like to speak at this time for public comment? Okay. All right, you want to speak now or wait? Yes, okay. Ryan
Good.
Smart.
Good morning, I'm Ryan Smart. I'm the Executive Director of the Florida Springs Council. Our attorney will address the agenda item 9 later. I really just wanted to look at just the big picture of what y'all have going on here and what's on the agenda today. You're about to approve a water supply plan that predicts a 30% increase, 130 million gallons a day in withdrawals from the Florida aquifer by 2045. The plan to offset that increase almost entirely relies on economically inefficient and possibly ineffective water supply and water resource development projects at an estimated cost of $2.1 billion. Water conservation, which is 3 times more cost effective, is an afterthought in the plan, accounting for less than 12% of the proposed offsets. And at the same time as you're approving this $2.1 billion plan, you're gonna approve a budget of less than $70 million for 2024. You're smart people. Those numbers don't add up. You're not gonna be able to fund a $2.1 billion alternative water supply plan with a $71 million budget. As you know, the Santa Fe and Schenectady rivers are in violation of their minimum flows because this district board has approved consumptive use permits that cause harm to these rivers. That's a fact. A review by the University of Florida found that the Suwannee River Water Management District approved 92% of consumptive use permit applications between 2000 and 2020, which includes 5 years after the rivers were found to be in violation of their minimum flows and experiencing significant harm. In fact, in the last 8 years that's been true, 28 new permits have been approved in just Alachua County, authorizing 6 million gallons a day in increased water withdrawals. The plan talks a lot about the recovery strategy, but clearly the recovery strategy is not working. It also talks about the new recovery strategy that's coming, but the new recovery strategy is more than 4 years past due. DEP has not presented an updated version in more than 2 years, and in the best case scenario, you're 16 months away from seeing that ratified by the legislature. So given all of this, I guess my question is, if you're not gonna prioritize cost-effective projects, if you're not gonna increase your budget, if you're not gonna deny consumptive use permits, And if DEP is gonna delay for the better part of a decade adopting rules to protect these rivers, how are we ever gonna get the Santa Fe and Tuckney out of this mess? How are we ever gonna reduce the significant harm, right? You don't have to pick regulation, you can pick projects, but if you're gonna pick the projects, you gotta fund them. If you're not gonna fund the projects, then you gotta use regulation. But you gotta pick one of these, and right now, it seems like you're waiting for someone to give you permission to protect these rivers and springs. And we don't have time for that. We're going down. We need to do stuff now. We can't wait for DEP, we can't wait for anyone else. This is y'all's responsibility, and I'm asking you, we're really begging you to please protect these rivers. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Did I see another hand? Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Joanne Tremblay, and I come from High Springs, and I've been living in the area for about 30 years and have seen the degradation of our rivers and springs. I'm here representing our Santa Fe River. And I'm going to read from a presentation here. Our Santa Fe River is a volunteer organization of riparian property owners and aquifer proponents. The 2023 North Florida Water Supply Plan notes that aquifer withdrawals already exceed the yields of the aquifer. The report also states that the population is swelling, so will the demands on our water resources. And the mandate is clear. This organization needs to make efforts to curtail the consumptive use in order to provide for the basic needs of future generations. The 2023 North Florida Regional Water Supply Plan assesses its goals for restoration based on an already diminished water supply. The reduced flow from our aquifer, coupled with phosphorus and nitrogen runoff, generates filamentous algae and cyanotoxins where there was once a thriving waterway. Reductions in our water supply from over-pumping, coupled with population growth, are killing our springs and rivers, the outflow of our aquifer. These water bodies generate millions of dollars annually to our local economies, as well as demonstrating the condition of our aquifer. In the case of Seven Springs, this is the time to apply reductions on their withdrawal that continue to harm our impaired springs. Their withdrawals are unrestricted by minimum flows. Our rivers can be at a trickle, and they can still continue to withdraw. Their business is not sustainable, and it is not in the public interest for them to continue to pump from an impaired spring. At minimum, their permits should be scaled back with a low water cutoff during minimum flow periods. Our goal is not to target one industry, but all consumptive use permits need to be cut back in order to meet the needs of our growing population. This is also an opportunity to apply restrictions to new developments. In the High Springs Fort White area, there are many new homes planning to draw from the aquifer. These new homeowners will expect a landscape with lawns and water-intensive plants. The goals set by the 2023 Water Plan, coupled with suggestions put forth by Alachua County, suggest tiered water rates and restrictions on all water-intensive landscaping needs that should be applied to all residents, old and new. These hard facts leave the water districts in a difficult position of restricting consumptive use permits. Water users will continue to demand unrealistic amounts of water, but with firm stewardship from the Swanee River Water Management District, we can transition into a more sustainable future. There is no alternative but to reduce consumptive use. Up until now, the Swanee River Water Management District has operated under the belief that Florida law obligates them to issue permits to anyone who fills out an application. Now our springs are dying, and steps must be taken to protect our most precious resource. The rivers have suffered significant damage as a result of overpumping. The water district simply must take a proactive approach to reduce current withdrawals and cease or sharply reduce new permits. It is a fact that the state's BMAPs are not the solution because they're not working. Please address across-the-board reductions to current and future permit holders, agriculture, industrial, and residential. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, anyone else at this time? All right, if not, then I will call the remaining cards when the items come up. At this time, we'll close public comment, and we'll go on to our consent agenda. Is there any comment from the board on the consent agenda? Not, we'll entertain a vote.
Make a motion that we approve it.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Item number 7 is hydrologic conditions report. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. This one quick. Good to see everybody again. I'm here to present the hydrologic conditions report for November 2023. Wanted to start out with a really nice photo that Chelsea Denon took for us, for me, I guess for herself, but she passed it on to me to use in the hydro conditions report. But this is Falling Creek Falls, Falling Creek, which is over just north of Lake City over in Columbia County. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. If you haven't been out there, please go check out the park. It's a really nice nature walk out there. Chelsea always does a great job with her photos, and she definitely did a great job with this one, and it's a great way to start her hydro report for November 2023. Rainfall for November 2023, we had a district-wide average right about 3.2 inches. That represents about 36% higher than that long-term average of 2.3 inches. We did decrease our deficit ever so slightly. We went down from a 2.8 inch deficit at the end of October to 2.6 inches, and the reason why is we moved over that window of time, and we excluded that November 2022 where we only got 3 inches of rainfall, whereas we're replacing that with 3.2 inches of rainfall, so we kind of decreased that ever so slightly. Taking a look at the map, that 2.5 to 3.5 inch range kind of encompasses that district-wide average for the month. And what's really interesting this month is that about 2/3 of the district is either at that average amount or higher when it comes to rainfall. 3.5 to 4.5 inches in that orange color, and then more than 4.5 inches in the red. We saw some of that over in Taylor, Madison, Columbia, and even just a little bit of Baker over near the St. Mary's. Less than that average amount, the 1.5 to 2.5 inches, really this swath right here through the south part of the district. Dixie County, Gilchrist County, up through Alachua, Bradford, and back down to Levy, all showed either 1.5 to 2.5 inches in that dark blue, or we had less than 1.5 inches in southern Dixie and western Levy counties, right over about the mouth of the Suwannee River. All in all, rainfall was really, really good for the month of November, considering this is kind of our drier time of year. This is November 26th. This was actually on a Sunday. This was our biggest rainmaker of the month, really. Of those 3.2 inches of rainfall, we had 1.7 inches in one day on November 26th. Once again, that 1.5 to 2 inch range kind of encompasses that district-wide average. We're still seeing the same, something similar here. The northern 2/3 roughly of the district showing either that average amount or higher, 2 to 2.5 inches. We're seeing that in orange, and more than 2.5 inches in one day. Taylor County up into Madison County, into Hamilton, Lafayette, Suwannee, Columbia, and even Baker. Baker really got a lot of rainfall, more than 2.5 inches of rainfall in that red color. Once again, the southern part of the district got less than an inch in that light blue, and then just a little bit of that 1 to 1.5 inches of rainfall in that darker blue, not quite getting as much as we got in the northern, say, 2/3 of the district roughly. With that said, the 30-day departure from precipitation, this is the National Weather Service's map. Really, we're seeing over in the western part of our district, this is Jefferson County, Madison County, Taylor County. That's that kind of that pink color, that's 8+ inches of surplus. So as we move through the district, we're really seeing lots and lots of surpluses, which is good. Over here, this is kind of the 5 to 8 inch range, that purple color. But as we start to move south, we still have some surpluses, but not quite as much as we had up north. Anywhere upwards of 1/2 inch to 1 inch in that light green, 1 to 2 inches in that darker green color. But once we get down into Dixie County and kind of western Levy County, really that's where it kind of switches over. We're seeing more of the neutral conditions, either 1/2 inch of deficit or to 1/2 inch of surplus. But there is one little area of Levy County that's showing 1/2 inch to 1 inch of deficit. That's the only part of our district that we were seeing deficits within the past 30 days due to the increase in rainfall that we got in November. With that said, our stream flow conditions for November 2023 look really good. Most of our district gauges began and ended the month in that normal range, that 25th to 75th percentile. We did have quite a few deviations from that in the higher end. The Osceola at Lamont it began and ended the month in that greater than 90th percentile. Econfina and Finholloway rivers both began in that 75th to 90th, that above normal flow range, and ended the month in that high, then greater than 90th percentile month. And down into the Steinhatchee and then over at the New River, both began the month in the normal and ended in the above normal for the month of November at the end. I did want to point out the only gauge that we monitor for this report, of course, is in South Georgia, but it's the only one that we saw any sort of below normal flows. That was the Ocklawaha at Thomasville. That one just didn't get quite the rainfall that we got here up in North Florida. This is the upper Florida and aquifer levels. This is the end of October. I showed this last board meeting. I'll do a comparison with what we've got for this month. But what we were seeing is some above 90th percentile wells. We got one here and then one in Madison County, one in Taylor and Madison. Most of our districts still in the 25th to 75th percentile. That's considered the normal range for our groundwater. Over in Taylor County, up into Madison County, even into Lafayette, we're seeing some of the 75th to 90th, so some of those higher groundwater levels. Even over into Alachua, I think there was a well here and then one just outside of our district that was in the 75th to 90th as well. We did have a few wells that were in the 10th to 25th percentile down in South Dixie, Lafayette County, and then up in Columbia County. Each had a well with 10 to 25th percentile of well levels for the month of October. Fast forward, this is the end of November. Really with that rainfall over in Taylor and Jefferson County and even into Lafayette County, we're seeing an expansion of that above 90th percentile. So they got quite a bit of rainfall and it's showing in our groundwater. A lot of those wells are trending upward as well too with those white arrows. I did want to point out though, unfortunately, we are getting some down in the drier parts of our district. If you recall that previous map that I showed where they're not getting quite as much rainfall and they're right there at the cusp of going into a deficit. Those wells are showing 10th to 25th percentiles right now in southern Dixie. Lafayette, that well is still there as well. One in South Taylor that's showing 10th to 25th percentile. Don't worry about this red color. That's just an artifact from how it's calculated. There's no well controlling that right now. That's just a product of the way it's calculated. And then over in Columbia County as well, there's one that's still showing that 10th to 25th percentile. But for it to be kind of our drier time of year, I think we're doing really good, especially not only with the rainfall, but with our surface water and groundwater looking really good. This is the U.S. Drought Monitor. This was released last Thursday. I think the one that's coming out this Thursday is probably going to look pretty similar unless we get some rainfall between now and then. But really our district's not seeing a whole lot as a whole, but we do have some counties and partial counties, Taylor County, Dixie County, over into Gilchrist, and then over into western Levy showing abnormally dry. Once again, those are the areas we're kind of seeing some of that groundwater at the 10th to 25th percentiles as well. I did want to mention that we are still under an El Nino advisory, and that is expected to continue through the winter into the spring. I think it's April through June, about a 62% chance of that going forward. And then I think from that point, we look to maybe switch over into something El Nino Southern Oscillation neutral conditions or something of that nature. But right now, this El Nino is going to continue through the winter, so we are probably going to see above normal rainfall probabilities for the next 3 months according to National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Most of the southeast is going to see above normal. This is a characteristic of an El Nino in our area. Higher rainfall amounts for especially the winter time, because we're going to see a kind of a stronger signal with that as we go forward through the winter. Now we're also seeing equal chances of either above, near normal, or below normal temperatures for pretty much the entire southern United States. And this is also, their models are seeing that because of the El Nino that we have, that advisory that we're currently under as well. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season. Thank goodness it's over. It ended on November 30th. That was the last official day. I did want to point out here, this is, I've shown this a few times, but this was the August 10th update from NOAA, from National Hurricane Center. 60% chance of above normal hurricane year. Yes, we did have an above normal hurricane with the named storms that we had. The original list began with Arlene and went all the way through Whitney. We only got to Tammy, but we did have an unnamed storm, which if we take a look at this map here, that was in January, this number 1. These are the tracks for the hurricanes. That one actually kind of went up into Canada, so they're counting that as a storm as well. So we had a total of 20 named storms for the season. Named storms, of course, they predicted 14 to 21, so they were pretty much right on there. Hurricanes, we had a total of 7 hurricanes. Of those hurricanes, 3 were major hurricanes. They predicted 2 to 5. Interestingly, I wanted to point out, too, that only 1 hurricane really hit the United States, and of course that was, unfortunately, Major Hurricane Idalia, which hit us at the end of August. 2 other storms did cross into the United States. One was Tropical Storm Harold in South Texas. I think that was over in August. And then Ophelia, Tropical Storm Ophelia, that was in September. Those were really the only ones that made any sort of land interaction with the United States. And I did want to point out, too, that there was only really 3 storms that were formed in the Gulf. All the action was over in the Atlantic, which makes sense because it was just record heat over in the Atlantic at this time of year. It was impeding that what was developing to be our El Nino signal over in the equatorial Pacific. I did want to point out a couple of facts. This is the 4th highest hurricane season since 1950 in terms of named storms. And this is the most named storms we've ever had in an El Nino year. And so I thought that was interesting as well. So it was definitely one for the record books for us. And thank goodness it's over. So we'll revisit this back in, in June of next year. All right, finally, November 2023 summary, we had a rainfall amount of right at about 3.2 inches, about 36% higher than that long-term average of 2.3 inches. We did go from a deficit at the end of October of 2.8 inches to a 2.6 inch deficit simply because we moved over and got a little bit more rainfall for this November versus November of 2022. District-wide upper Florida and aquifer levels fell from the 55th percentile at the end of October to the 51st. We had that's due to a median level decrease across all of our wells in the district of about ½ foot. El Nino conditions will continue through the winter into spring with about a 62% chance of occurrence from April to June 2024, at which point I think we'll probably switch over into more neutral conditions to go into the summer. As far as the drought monitor is concerned, parts of Taylor, Dixie, Gilchrist, and Levy counties were showing abnormally dry as of last Thursday for that update. And finally, the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season ended on November 30th with 20 total storms, 7 hurricanes, and 3 major hurricanes. Pretty much the same that was predicted by the National Hurricane Center in their August update. Madam Chair, I'll take any questions that the board may have.
Any questions today?
Robbie, you may have answered this question for me before, but with regard to Alligator Lake, is that a sinkhole opened up there again?
Madam Chair? Yes, sir. That one is dry currently. I've made note of that in the report that it is controlled by a sinkhole, but where the gauge is a little bit kind of outside of that, so it does go dry. I'm not sure about the lake itself. I haven't seen the lake itself, but I do know where the gauge is currently dry.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do we have any announcements or cooperating agencies?
Madam Chair, I am aware that Commissioner Tommy Langford is here from Gilchrist County. He represents District 4 there in Gilchrist County.
Okay, wonderful. Glad you're here. Anybody else? That's it for today? All right. Tommy, do you have anything for us today?
Yes, ma'am. We have number 9, which is the final order, number 23-006 in the case of Florida Springs Council versus Seven Springs Water Company and the Swanee River Water Management District. Madam Chair, if it's okay, what I'd like to do is let me kind of introduce the topic and give a little bit of the history. Then I would recommend that you open it up to the general public for public comments, and then allow once public comments are concluded, allow the attorneys for the parties to make a presentation. I've told them that would be limited to 10 minutes. And then once that's done, certainly the board can ask any questions or anything it would like to do, and then you need to make a decision on the matter. So if it's okay, I'll introduce the topic.
Sounds good.
The materials for this topic start on LC1 and includes a memo. Kind of the history of this is that Seven Springs Company owns a piece of property in Gilchrist County, and for many years they've had a water use permit on that property where they withdraw groundwater and pipe it over to a neighboring facility where it is manufactured into bottled water. In 2019, I believe March of 2019, they had made an application to renew that water use permit, and they made the application before the existing permit expired, so it was timely. And they began the process of working with the district on trying to see if that water use permit, the renewal application could be granted. In March of 2020, the district actually recommended, district staff recommended denial of that water use permit because they could not reach, could not agree on the proper permitting criteria. One of the, I think the major issue was that the district felt that the owner of the water bottling facility should be a co-permittee because the use of the water was occurring, in our opinion, the use of the water was occurring at the water bottling facility, and therefore they need to be on the permit. At any rate, Seven Springs filed a petition. That petition went to the Division of Administrative Hearings, was heard, and a recommended order came out to grant that recommended for the district to grant the application and issue the renewal permit. In February of 2021, this board had a special meeting. It approved the recommended order, issued final order approving the recommended order and adopting the recommended order and issuing the permit. Thereafter, Florida Springs Council filed a petition on our final order. The district agreed that they had the ability to do that at that point. Seven Springs disagreed with that. We referred that over to the Division of Administrative Hearings. They dismissed the petition. Seven Springs appealed. The district agreed with them in their position that it should not have been dismissed. First District Court of Appeal ultimately reversed, sent it back down, and said no, they had the right to file a petition. Then the matter was again before the Division of Administrative Hearings. They assigned an administrative law judge. The administrative law judge conducted a final hearing. That final hearing was held and a recommended order was issued. The recommended order again recommends issuing the permit. One difference this time is that now the parties had agreed for the bottler, the entity that owns the bottling plant, to be added as a co-permittee. So that addressed the district's main issue. So what we have today is the time that this board considers issuing the final order on the administrative law judge's recommended order. The recommended order recommends that the permit be issued, and with the addition of the water bottler, which is Blue Triton, that they be added as a co-permittee. For many times, I think it's almost unfortunate that they call it a recommended order. A recommended order makes it sound like you have lots of discretion, and in fact you do not. And as far as issues of fact that were decided by the administrative law judge, you can only deviate from those findings of fact to the extent you find they are not supported by any competent substantial evidence in the record. And upon our review, we did not find that to be the case, and I don't think anyone's argued that. On your issues of law, you are only allowed to deviate from the issues of law that were found by the administrative law judge to the extent those issues are issues of law over which this board has substantive jurisdiction. So for instance, evidentiary rulings made by the administrative law judge, you have no jurisdiction over that. You couldn't reverse those. So that's the issue that's here today for this board to consider. Now also in the materials was the recommended order. Once a recommended order is entered, the parties have the ability to file exceptions to the recommended order. The point of the exceptions is to tell this board what they disagree with and what they think should have been done differently. The only side that filed any exceptions was Florida Springs Council. The response from the other parties is all the exceptions and the responses are in the board materials, and then a proposed final order that was drafted by me is also in the materials. The proposed final order denies the exceptions for the reasons set out in the order. It also adopts the recommended order in full and directs the issuance of the permit. Now, that is the proposed final order that I have prepared to recommend to you, and that is my recommendation. You are not bound by my recommendation, obviously. This board makes its own decision. And in making that decision, you should consider what the materials that were presented as well as what you're about to hear. So I would recommend, Madam Chair, that we go ahead and open it up to public comment, consider the public comment, presentation from the attorneys, and then bring it back to the board. Now, one last thing I would recommend, normally this board is very, there's a free exchange, and I think there should be a free exchange, but I would recommend that you let everyone have their public comment, you let the attorneys make their presentations, and then if you have questions, ask questions. Because the point of that is you may get those questions answered early, and an early question may be misinterpreted as this board's already made up its mind. And so that's why I would say certainly ask questions, get your questions answered, but let's let everybody make their presentations, and then we can go back.
All right, sounds like a good recommendation. So, we'll go ahead then and open to public comment.
Yes, ma'am.
And, I've got cards here, and as I call your name, if you just come to the podium to speak and state your name, please. Tommy Langford. Good morning.
Good morning. I know some of you. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Tommy Langford, a resident of Gilchrist County. Also serve on the Gilchrist County Board of County Commissioners. I served from 2002 to 2012. Sat out for 10 years, and now I'm back on the board. I'm here to talk about our great water plant here in Gilchrist County. We cannot have a better industry than the water plant, bar none. What an asset it is to Gilchrist County. They protect our drinking water. I've been told about 50 test wells, monitor every day, all day. We couldn't have a better steward of our water supply. Economic impact is tremendous. They pay property taxes, $123,840 a year. Their tangible taxes is $517,000 a year. That's about $640,840 a year, and that's good for Gilchrist County. Also, Gilchrist County residents can live here, work here, have a good paying job, and never leave the county. You can't ask for better than that. At one time, Blue Springs asked for a permit, and I did some research on it, being a county commissioner. I actually called and came up here to this district and got some information. I asked about the impact on the river and the aquifer, and I was told it could not be measured. Zero impact, basically. One person told me it was like taking a teaspoon and trying to drain the Santa Fe River, so there's no impact on it. And I will agree, I've been here all my life. I fish the Santa Fe River, live close to it right now. The river's controlled by rainfall, as the guy just presented. Lots of rain, water comes up. No rain, water goes down. If not bottled, it goes to the Gulf of Mexico, and the rain clouds bring it back. That's the way it was designed. When we have a disaster, the first product to sell out is water. When people have no electricity, what do they need most? Drinking water. Who provides that? Water plant. By the truckloads, and sometimes even free. We couldn't ask for a better partner, a better industry, a better business than the water plant. That's as clean as it gets, and I'm very thankful that we have them. The state reaps the benefits from this. A bottle of water, 16.9 ounces, costs $1, 7-cent sales tax. The state gets 52.9% per gallon. 8-ounce bottle, same thing. Some places like Orlando, you'll pay $5 for a bottle. But that equals $2.65 of state revenue. Look at the benefits when there's no harm. Water protection, we have it, we love it. Jobs, residents benefit. Taxes, including state sales tax, good for the county budget. It's a win-win for all. Matter of fact, their average salary is around $29 an hour. They have benefits. They have total employees of about 70 plus employees. They spend $2.3 million annually in maintenance, their energy, their light bills, $1.5 million. Their quality of their products is filtered with UV light, low ozone, 0.2 and 0.45 microfilters. I could go on and on. Recent donations, emergency services for hurricanes, local schools, water dogs, it's just unlimited. Water management, waste management, they have a wonderful waste management, got a lot of compliments, daily vital checks on the wastewater. Wastewater treated to pH neutral prior to excavating to rapid infiltration basin. Everything's tested, monthly water waste supplies are sampled. I couldn't ask for a better business, a better opportunity for Gilchrist County. We like it. I live right next to it. It's a wonderful opportunity for Gilchrist County. It's an asset to Gilchrist County and the residents that live there. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you, sir. Raven Siegfried? Good morning.
Hello, my name is Raven Siegfried, and I am here to speak to you today as a political scientist. What I have to say is very simple. When you are considering the administrative law judge recommendation regarding the Seven Springs water bottling permit, the individual profit is not in the public interest. Public interest, in fact, only encompasses those things that benefit the public. My parents run a small business. When they turn a profit at their business, no one would make the mistake of concluding that they are providing a public service. The money that they make only goes to benefit us, a private family. This is how the American political economic system works. Public interest also is not harm, such as the harm that will occur to the springs when you issue this permit. When one company takes water for their own profit, they take it away from everyone else. This is the opposite of what the phrase public interest means. The gentleman over there just stated that if there are any issues of fact with the administrative law judge recommendation, you can reject the recommendation. Here's your issue of fact. Individual profit is not in the public interest. I know that you will not listen to me today, but I want you to at least be aware of just how Orwellian it is when you decide that harm is beneficial as you make your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have, I mispronounced this, Thor Siegfried? Good morning.
Good morning. We're honored to be here with everybody today regarding this important issue. I'm pretty steadfast about the fact that bottled water is really bad for the environment. And I encourage all of you as a board to not issue the permit to, is it Seven Springs or whatever the bottled water company is. So just know that I'm with you if you decide to not issue the permit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. My other two cards are for a different item. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this issue? Okay, we'll let you come up one more time.
Well, it's unusual to hear how this particular agenda item, you know, how you set it up in terms of public comment, and that's why I'm up here. Because if my comments are going to matter today at this moment, I want to say something. Number one, there is no tax on buying bottled water. So the idea that somehow 7% or 7.5% is being collected, there's no money being collected for bottled water from the consumer. And what is left behind is a pile of garbage, by the way. I do cleanups all over the place, on the roads, in the water. Most of our cleanups are plastic and bottle caps and paper and cellophane and cardboard. The other thing is, there's one more thing, two things. In California, where they're fighting the same kind of water permit that we're fighting here, it's over 60,000 gallons of water. We're fighting over 984,000 gallons of water per day. Just let that sink in for a minute. They're fighting over 60,000 gallons of water per day, and they went to court just like we did. You know, they won. The citizens won in their case. And in our situation, the other thing is there used to be a permit caveat where if the water levels got so low at 500 CFSs or 500 cubic feet per second that they had to turn the bottle or the extraction off, or they had to reduce the extraction. There was a caveat in there. Somewhere along the line, with the limiting conditions of the permit, that was lost. over the MFLs that weren't issued during this process of this permit. The MFLs were not issued, or if we're still fighting over whatever the recovery, whether they're whatever, which way the MFLs are. But those pumps being extracted at that location at Jenny Springs Head Spring, at the Blue Springs, it just collapsed this summer. They need to be turned off when the water levels get so low, because right now they're low. There's an interesting report today with the water, rain level, whatever. We're low. So, so those two things, water levels being at super low, bring a caveat in, bring some sort of condition to that permit. If it gets below 500 cubic feet per second, it should be turned off or pulled back or something. 984,000 gallons of water a day. And then the other thing is, talk so much about this. The other thing was, what was the last? I can't remember. I'm stymied by this whole process anymore. It's really appalling. 984,000 gallons of water a day to one landowner.
Thank you.
Ms. Johns?
Yes.
I would also like to add something to this discussion.
If you have something different to contribute, all right, just a few minutes, not 3.
All right, this has to do with the water bottling plant, and given that almost 1 million gallons a day is really a drop in the bucket when you consider the amount of water being consumed by phosphate and the titanium industry, and agriculture, which use a whole lot more water. One thing we have to keep into perspective is that our population growth is such that our overall consumption is great. So we need to moderate all of our consumers and step it down, as was suggested by the water plan. We need to step down our consumption so that we can meet the needs of all of our residents and industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, at this time we'll close public comment, except for I think the 2 attorneys with, I don't know who wants to go first.
What I would recommend, Madam Chairman, is to let the Springs Council as petitioner go first, Seven Springs go second, and then Mr. Fred Reeves, who represented the district before Noah, is here in case he needs to make any comments as well.
All right, sounds good. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. My name is Doug McLaughlin. I represent the Florida Springs Council in this case. We originally filed a petition, as Mr. Reeves has indicated, a while back, and we had 2 concerns. The first concern was, as Mr. Reeves indicated, that we felt that the water user, at that time Nestle and now Blue Triton, should be a permittee. Eventually, that came to pass, and we prevailed on that first issue. The second issue we challenged is that this project, there should be a consideration of whether this project is clearly is consistent with public interest. And that is a requirement of all water use permits, that they must be shown to be consistent with the public interest. Now, that is one of the 3 basic prongs of any water use permit that is required. First prong is that a project has to be shown that its use is reasonable beneficial. The second prong has to show that it is not interfering with an existing permitted use of water. And the third prong, that's in the statute and it's in your rule, that says it has to be consistent with the public interest. Now, that the third prong usually doesn't come up in water use permitting. It just doesn't. But in this case, you have in the record approximately 19,000 comments, public comments, about this particular permit. Obviously, there is a lot of public interest in this particular permit. We think that the public interest has to be addressed in this case. Unfortunately, your rules have a definition of what this public interest is. And let me read it to you. It's in Rule 40B2.021(7). And it defines public interest as, quote, those broad-based interests and concerns that are collectively shared by members of the community or residents of the district or state. So the third prong requirement in your rule, consistent with the public interest requirement, requires any proposed water use to be consistent with the broad-based interests and concerns of people in your district or in the state. That is required in your rule. So how can you all determine what are the broad-based interests and concerns of the residents of the state and the residents in your district or in the state? How can you determine that? Well, it seems to me that to consider and weigh the public comments you received is a way you would certainly determine what that broad-based concern and interest is from the residents of your district. How else could you determine it? The proposed final order that you have in front of you today, interestingly, says that it holds that any consideration of the public comments in this case is impermissible. We think that is an incorrect conclusion of law. The district staff in this case is taking the position that because in your permitting handbook there's a section called, it's section 2.3.4.1, which you'll hear that number quite a bit, in the handbook for beverage processing facilities, and they're contending that this is the only public interest factors you can consider. Now, section 2.3.4.1, well, let me read it to you. It says, in determining whether a proposed beverage processing use is reasonable and beneficial and consistent with the public interest, the governing board will consider the following information. And then it lists items A through K that you should consider under this particular requirement for considering the public interest. Interestingly, none of those items A through K talk about the broad-based interests and concerns shared by your residents, residents of the district or the state. That is required in that third prong rule that is in your rules. So also this particular section 2.3.4.1, it's not the only criteria. That is our argument, that it is not the only criteria you have to look at when considering public interest. You also have your rule that says you have to be consistent with the concerns and interests of your residents in the district and the state. However, even in that listing of A through K, the last section, K, says that you have to look at other documentation necessary to complete the application. Well, what other documentation is relevant in this case? Certainly it should be the concerns and interests of your residents in this district. That's what your rule says. That's how your rule defines public interest. So we think that this third prong requirement requires that all water use permits be consistent with those broad-based interests and concerns shared by residents of the district. That rule is in effect, and we believe that section 2.3.4.1, yes, that adds requirements for beverage processing facilities, but that isn't a limitation. Now, we think there is a way to address public interest concerns in this case. Presently, Seven Springs is withdrawing water for its use for these drinking water bottling facilities from the lower Santa Fe River and its associated springs. These water bodies are presently under an MFL recovery status, which means that they are not meeting their MFL right now, and therefore any further withdrawal from these water bodies will cause significant harm. That is a legal definition of MFL not being met. Also, for these water bodies, there's presently, the MFL is being reevaluated. So it is Florida Springs Council recommendation that the water use from this plant be limited to its actual withdrawal rate, so that there's no more additional withdrawal. And that would be consistent with the MFL requirements. Now, you're going to hear from the district and Seven Springs that they're presently meeting the requirements for the recovery status for these water bodies. And in fact, there is a requirement that if your permit is 5 years or less, and you're not increasing the permitted withdrawal rate, that you meet the first prong, the reasonable beneficial prong. It doesn't say you're meeting the public interest prong. There's 3 prongs again. You have to meet each one. They have to be different legally. That's our argument. The district can argue otherwise. Anyway, that is our argument. We think that that under the 3rd prong, in this case, that would be appropriate. And the difference is this: the permit presently allows about 980,000 gallons per day. The actual amount that they have been using is about 300 to 400. With this permit, they can meet their reasonable beneficial standard by going up from 300 to 400 to about 900. And in fact, that's probably what's going to happen because the plant has expanded. So there is going to be an increase, and we think that that should not be allowed because there is a significant amount of public interest to express a concern about this. So in summary, there is a very significant degree of public interest in this case. That cannot be denied. We believe that it is legally required that those public comments be considered. We think that limiting the determination of this proposed water use to only the items listed in 2.3.4.1 is simply incorrect legally. That 2.3.4.1 does not address whether the water use is consistent with those broad-based concerns of your residents in your district. So Florida Springs Council urges the governing board to incorporate a permit condition that limits the withdrawal to the actual historic rate from this facility until the adoption of the new MFL. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning and Merry Christmas. My name is Doug Manson and I'm here with Priya Heater. We represent Seven Springs, the applicant in this case. First, I'm going to address out of order the idea of has there been insufficient public comment in this proceeding. I've been attending your meetings for many years, and since we put the application in 2019, there's been public comment about this permit at almost every board meeting. In addition to that, it's been 4 years of litigations and appeal. So the idea that there would not be enough consideration by this board or staff of the public comment that's been put into place is ridiculous. There's been 2 administrative proceedings. This is actually the first time in the history of the Administrative Procedures Act in the state of Florida, but there's been 2 proceedings on 1 permit, being 1 permit renewal. So the idea that there hasn't been some consideration of public comment is ludicrous. The idea that we haven't been vetted in this proceeding through your staff's technical review, through the first hearing officer that heard the issues and 2 days of testimony and public comment in that administrative proceeding and provided you with a recommended order to issue it. In addition to the fact that we've now had a second hearing, we've also had district staff reviewing new information. And just so you know, the hearings are to develop agency action. So anything new that came along during that 4 years could be brought into the hearing. They're not appeals. You're sitting here today, as your counsel told you, in a quasi-judicial proceeding, like a judge, like an appellate judge. You're limited to looking at what the record is below, which is the hearing and all the evidence that was submitted. We do these evidentiary hearings and these trials to protect the due process of the applicants and other people that participate. The idea is you have to stand before an independent hearing officer, put your evidence into the record, and then the judge considers that evidence. And there are rules to the proceedings, just like there's rules at the district. And we follow the rules. Seven Springs met the permitting criteria. 2 administrative law judges have found that. This board, acting in its prior final order, found that as well. So we sit here today with the idea that there are 19,000 public comments. Florida Springs Council argues they should be considered as part of the public interest. The staff reviewed those comments. To the extent you can, there's 19,000. But this isn't Facebook. Your number of likes in a popularity contest don't determine whether you meet the rules and the criteria that provided reasonable assurance that you were able to have your permit issued. How that's done is through your staff's evaluation, through administrative law judges who go through and take sworn testimony. And in this last proceeding that we just had with Florida Springs Council, they presented no expert testimony. The district's Warren Zoanka, who is a professional geologist, testified in support of the permit. Seven Springs presented David Brown, also an expert professional geologist who supported the permit. Florida Springs themselves stipulated in this proceeding, which is discussed extensively in the recommended order, that Seven Springs met the criteria for no harm to the water resources. And so you'll find the judge making rulings in the recommended order saying, you can't argue that somehow the permit shouldn't be issued because you didn't meet minimum flows and wells, because you stipulated that they met all the criteria for issuance except for in the public interest. So in addition to that, as your final order, proposed final order states, there's a discussion about how the district rules define what public interest is for the governing board for these specific water processing plants. And it's a list of criteria that was discussed earlier, and it's discussed in your proposed final order, so I won't read it to you. But the idea is we've met all those. All those criteria were met. We submitted the evidence for it, we had sworn testimony at the hearings for it, and the issue is before you, the case is before you to be issued based on those evidentiary proceedings and the rulings by an independent judge and by your own staff's recommendation. So when we sit here and we go through and talk about what can be decided by the governing board today, it's your final order, absolutely. But you are limited to some extent by the fact that there's been an administrative proceeding and a judge has entered a recommended order. So the way you're limited by that is to look at the facts and the information that's contained. And if there was any competent substantial evidence to support the facts of the hearing officer, then they cannot be overturned. And she has an extensive factual record of all the criteria being met and us providing reasonable assurances and recommending issuance. In addition to that, I'd say there has been a reduction in this permitted use. The permit came in 1994 and 1995. The quantity as it was issued was 1.152 million gallons a day. It's been reduced through the negotiations in the first proceeding with the district to 984,000 gallons per day. The plant, as you know, is located in Gilchrist County, very close to withdrawal. So all the economic activity that's involved with this occurs in the county, which I know is in the public interest in prior proceeding that we've had before you. So my recommendation to you, if I could make one, that'd be so bold, is the idea that you go along with what 2 administrative law judges said. Specifically today, your administrative law judge Francine Folks held the proceeding. They didn't bring in sworn witnesses or experts to testify on what was going on. They didn't bring in new facts that hadn't been looked at by the district staff. I didn't bring in testimony of any kind that proved or in any way, shape, or form changed the fact that we provided at Seven Springs that reasonable assurances that all permitting criteria, including in the public interest, were met. So we're here to recommend and hope that you'll go with the proposed the final order that's been placed before you by council and issue the permit for the 5-year duration. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Chair, members of the board, my name's Fred Reeves. I represented the district in this litigation. I'm going to be very, very brief. I think the other lawyers have gone over their positions very completely. I think we would recommend approval of the recommended order. Why? First point is that the bottler, Blue Triton Brands, Inc., which was a big issue on this permit with staff, and indeed under our permitting rules, will be added as a co-permittee. The ultimate user of the water is added. That's very, very important under our permitting regime. The second point, the public interest arguments that Mr. McLaughlin and Florida Springs Council made were all made to the administrative law judge at the hearing and were rejected, and I believe properly so. We have very specific rules on bottling permits, on beverage use permits. If the interpretation of Florida Springs Council is adopted, that will turn our bottling use permitting program and permitting rules application on its head. It will be confusion. The administrative law judge, Judge Folks, properly rejected Florida Springs Council's interpretation of the bottling rules, affirmed the plain language rules governing bottling uses in our rules, and I think correctly ruled, both in support of our staff, the way they interpreted the rules, the way they applied the rules to this permit, and I would simply ask that the board approve the recommended order as drafted. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir.
And so, Madam Chair, I think if any board member has any questions or anything you'd like to ask anyone, I think now would be the appropriate time.
Okay. So I'll open up for board members to ask questions or make comments at this time.
Clarification.
Yes, sir.
Tommy,
Yes, sir.
the original, this application was filed in March of 19 for a 5-year permit.
Yep.
Does this permit expire in March of 24?
No, sir, and that's actually addressed on the last page of the proposed final order. Under the present recovery strategy, you are allowed, existing users are allowed to get a renewal permit for up to 5 years without having to offset impacts. That was the recovery strategy set out by DEP in its rule. The board issued the permit at the date of its last final order. Upon Florida Springs Council filing a petition and that being referred to DOA, that permit was held in suspension. So the time that it's been at DOA since it was referred to DOA until you all issue your final order, which you'll vote on today, that wouldn't be counted against that 5 years. And so that's that's what's laid out in the final order.
All right. So the first approval had no time frame.
The first
This
approval.
all will go on this approval.
The February 2023 final order you issued said issue the permit. That permit said duration's 5 years. Within 30 days, Springs Council had filed a petition and it was referred to DOA. So it was a 5-year duration permit, but the time at DOA doesn't count against the 5 years. So you had 30 days or so of the 5 years. It was referred to DOA. Time doesn't tick. Once you all approve, if you approve the final order today, it'll start ticking again.
Madam Chair, may I? Tommy, if I heard you correctly, you said February of 2023.
I'm sorry. You're right.
I think it was 21.
You're right. February 2021. I apologize.
How much time is left on the permit?
It would be 5 years minus 30 or 60 days, something,
From this point?
from the time you issue the final order. Yes, sir.
I guess I'm just confused with the fact that the first final order had no time bearing.
Had no time bearing. I'm not.
We issued a final approval once before.
Yes, sir.
21. And that time has no bearing because there was another appeal filed immediately.
It does. It says it's a 5-year permit, and that 5-year duration is correct. That is the 5-year duration. The question is whether the time at DOA counts against that 5 years. And we've got on page LC 110, we've cited a final order of Department of Environmental Regulations where they held that upon referral to DOA, and they're talking about one of their permits, the department's final action would be converted into proposed agency action, And technically, while it's at DOA, there is no valid permit. So that's why that time at DOA wouldn't count against the 5 years.
But Tommy, the permit was issued effective 21, right?
Correct.
So it runs 5 years from that date, with the exception of the 30 days it was at DOA.
Correct.
Right, okay.
And so the practical effect of that is, if you all issue the final order today, they'll have 5 years less, that gap between the original final order and the referral to DOA.
Essentially 4 years, 11 months
Essentially, yes, sir.
from today.
And so, and Madam Chair, if I may, at this point, you've got the proposed final order. If there's no more questions, or, the board's certainly free to discuss it among the board members, et cetera. What needs to happen, though, the final action of the board needs to be by motion, second, majority vote. Y'all need to issue a final order on this. Now, you have a proposed final order that begins, that is in the packet beginning at LC 99. You can vote to issue that final order. You can vote to issue that final order with modifications, or however you'd like to proceed.
Is everyone clear on what we're doing and the procedure? And do you have?
I just have one comment. Of course, I take my responsibility of being on the governing board very seriously, and read all 113 pages of the documentation that we have presented to the board. It has been an extensive, litigated, and discussed issue over my tenure on this board. When I first came on this board, the issue was before us to approve or disapprove, and I wasn't as well versed on the topic at that time as I am now. But feel like based on all the testimony, all the litigation, and believe me, the passion and the concern of the people who have presented today in opposition to the issue, I appreciate you. I appreciate your passion and your desire to preserve our rivers and the aquifer. But it's my responsibility on this board. I feel bound, based on my knowledge and based on the testimony and the recommendation, to make a motion to approve the recommended order that was proposed by
The proposed final.
proposed final order, yes.
So we,
And I second that.
okay, so we have a motion and we have a second. Do we need a roll call vote or just a majority vote?
Majority vote sufficient.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Thank you. Tommy, I appreciate you giving us the, going over everything as a summary, and it was helpful, and I think all of us on this particular item spent a lot of time reading and having feelings about it and following the rules. So, we will go ahead and move on to our next item. Quick break. Oh, all right, let's, 10:30, is that too much? All right, we will take a break and start back up at 10:30.
That's great.
Going to resume our meeting. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning, Madam Chair, board members, and those in attendance. For business and community services, we'd ask that you find 8 items on this morning's agenda. Items number 12 and 15 were approved by way of consent. Items number 10 and 14 are informational items. So we'll start this morning with item number 11, which is an update on the facilities presented by Mr. Steve Schroeder. Then we'll go to item number 13, which is an update on the preliminary budget. And this will be presented by our Chief Financial Officer, Pam Shaw. That item is found on BCS page 10. And then we'll wrap it up with Warren, our Division Director of Resource Management, and he will present items 16 and 17 for your consideration.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Tim. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Good to see you.
Steve, is it a coincidence every time you get up in that podium, you want to spend money?
Yes, sir.
Okay, is it just a coincidence, or is it just like who you are?
That's who I am.
Okay, all right, I figured that.
My wife hates that.
I understand.
You know.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's why I let her manage the books.
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, members of the board, and thank you, Mr. Schwab. The first item for consideration today is item number 11. It's on BCS page 4. It's a request for approval of the ranking of the contractors under our request for qualifications. On October 24th, 23, the district published a request for qualifications for design, build, construction services for renovation of the field services building, which is the former lab building. The RFQ was advertised and published on the DemandStar electronic bidding system, the district's website, and the state of Florida vendor bid system. The project will remodel the old lab building to create a functional workspace for hydrological data collection and will include freight, receiving, and storage. The addition of the storage space will free up space within the other district facilities to more productive uses. The qualification packages were due and opened on November 15th, 2023 at 3 p.m. 5 packages were submitted. On November 21, the selection committee met and ranked each firm 1 through 5. Scores were then averaged, resulting in an overall firm ranking. The top 3 firms are listed below in ranked order. Staff recommends that the district enter into negotiations with the top firm listed below and contract for services in an amount not to exceed $1 million. And if unable to reach an agreement with the terms with the first top firm, then enter into negotiations with the second, and so on until we have reached an agreement. A performance bond will be required as part of the agreement, and retainage will be deducted from each incremental payment until completion and acceptance of the final project, including as-built drawings. The selected contractor will be responsible for obtaining all permits, maintaining appropriate levels of insurance, and competitively soliciting subcontractor bids to achieve the most cost-effective completion. The project is funded by an appropriation in the amount of $1 million from the Florida Legislature in the 2023 General Appropriations Act. Funding for this project is included in the fiscal year 23-24 budget. The contractors ranked in order were Gateway Contracting. They were the unanimous #1 pick at the very first selection, very first vote, followed by Gary Construction Incorporated in Lake City, and Gray Construction Services, also in Lake City, were ranked 3rd. And Tyler, can you bring up that? This is a floor plan of the current lab building as it is set up, just to get you coordinated or oriented. At this present time, this is a lab. There are hoods and blowers here. This is IT storage. This is hydrologic storage. This we affectionately call the chicken coop area. It's a bunch of fenced storage. The plan that we've developed is to essentially, this room will become open. There'll be no lab equipment replaced. We'll have a door installed here. These 2 doors will remain. They'll install shelving and a central work island in here for the IT staff. The back half will be closed in completely, all the way here, including the chicken coop area, to create a condensed workspace. There'll be work tables, rolling islands for them to work with, and there will be no offices in here. It'll be simply workspace. We've already had the contractors already started some preliminary assessments, and we believe that this will be able to be completed. In fact, we're going to set a target completion date for June 30. Absent any unforeseen circumstances. We will have split AC systems out there. We'll have a system for the storage area, and we'll also have a system for the work area, since storage doesn't need to have the same climate control levels as would the work area. And with that, Madam Chair, I would move the recommendation.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a restroom facility?
There will be a single restroom facility. Currently, there is one here. That's a stairway to the attic. There's a restroom here with a shower, toilet, and a sink. We're going to go strictly to since there won't be, the shower was here because these guys might get exposed to some chemicals here in the lab. They won't have a shower here now. They will have a commode and a sink. The attic, it's going to be for it's going to be solely for mechanical. The air handlers will be up there. There'll be no storage up there. There won't be workspace up there. It'll basically be just that, an attic. The plan is to install with a standing seam metal roof. There'll be new siding done completely around the building. We're going to change here. We're going to have, and I should have mentioned this, I apologize. We'll have double doors here. We're going to have a ramp built to come up ADA compliant so that we can get, right now we get big pallets of batteries, solar panels, etc. We have to roll those all the way over to the Kirby building on a pallet jack. Whereas here, we can roll them into here, store them until they're ready to be distributed to where they need to go. We can also move a lot of district storage items out here. So we have worked with the stakeholders, and everyone seems pretty happy with the plan.
Do you know how many square feet you'll end up with?
We will end up with probably, given that we're going to incorporate, it's 1,955 square feet is the current inside area, counting the 2 storage rooms and then these areas. We're going to cover this, which is 610 feet, so that'll be roughly, well, that'll add to 2,500 square feet, and then this area will probably add another 200-300 square feet. And we had a great construction who was under continuing contract with us. Came out last year and did on a task work assignment and did a walkthrough and an estimate on 2 provisions. One, total restoration of the building, take off all the old rotten siding, take out the drywall, do the mold remediation, do everything they had to do to the building, including new roofs. That was $1.3 million. That included installing new lab equipment, blowers, hoods, etc. They also did one to demolish and replace the building, and that came out about 1.6. Our guess is, because we're not putting in, and we've gone through the figures that Gray provided, because we're not replacing the hood equipment, we're going to have far less cabinets and infrastructure in here. This is basically going to be an open shell. We're going to have just a few work tables mounted to the walls here, some storage shelves, and as we said, rolling islands for the work crews. We are guessing this will come in substantially below $1 million.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
That was gonna be my question, was where you were coming up with $1 million, if they had already given you numbers that were far exceeding that number, but you're reducing what the actual
Yes, sir.
work is gonna be. And the second question is, when you rank the 3 contractors, can you give us some feel for any of the criteria, or maybe the top 2 or 3 items of criteria that you use to base that ranking?
We assess them based on prior projects, not just with the district, but similar projects elsewhere. We weighted them based upon their distance to the district. We weighted did they have an in-house or an outside architect? Because to us that was important, and I will tell you, most of them use outside. The ones that use inside, we weren't quite certain of the quality of that particular individual design professional. We looked at their overall quality of work, their reviews that they had received from prior projects, and then of course, as always, considered their prior experience with the district.
So based on that, I would assume that the inside engineering probably weighted heavily in the decision, the way they were ranked.
It did. I will say that it also came down to, did the design professional have experience with the district? Did we have experience with quality work? And I can tell you, with looking at Gateway and with Great Construction, both of those architects, the design professionals, have a great deal of experience with the district, and we've been very happy with what they've done. So it was a variety of things we weighted them on, and I'd be happy to provide you with the sheet.
I'm sure you've
available.
vetted them very well. I'm not questioning it. I was just curious as to what you were looking at.
Yes, sir. And there was at least one contractor who called and asked why someone from Jacksonville got the job when 3 firms from Lake City submitted. And I will be frank, it's Gateway is in Jacksonville, but Gateway has been very responsive to us in their continuing contract, and I think that weighed with many of the criteria. And no one rated them high on their distance.
No further questions, Madam Chair.
Any other questions? Well, tell them to skinny up their pencil and do their best, because we need some money left over to fix a few other things. I can do that.
Madam Chair, we certainly expect them to sharpen that pencil, and I can assure you, when they come in with the first proposal, I will be, myself and Kelly Landis and Tim Alexander will be doing a little shaving as well. So we will do our best to get the price as low as we possibly can. Our hope is that if we can get below that million, which we're quite certain we can, we will be able to distribute those funds to use in other district priority projects this year. Key is this is a 1-year allocation, a 1-year appropriation. It was specifically designated for this building, so we would need to get some blessing on high to use it for other purposes. But
Sounds good.
we certainly will explore that option.
Sounds good. All right. Any other questions? Nope. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried.
Thank you all very much. And if I may, in January, we plan to give you a full facilities update like we've done in the past. But I just want to bring you up to speed on a couple of items that I know you may or may not be aware of. One, I know you are, the berm project. If you noticed today when you came up, that is complete. They have cleared out all the berms. They went beyond the scope of their duty. They went ahead and burned off, and literally burned off the sealant that was on the walls, the water barrier, and sealed and painted, and it looks really, really good. We had planned on putting some trees back in, but staff overwhelmingly said, no, leave it be. It looks really nice. So right now our plan is to leave it as is. That may change as we move further down the road. But for now, we're gonna leave it as is, check how the drainage works, and if all that's fine, then we'll make some other decisions. But we're quite pleased. They did finish on time. They were on budget, but as I said, they did some things beyond the scope of work. Very good job there. When you come in January, we will have some construction going on in the lobby. If you recall, we had some water intrusion on the windows out there, that curved bank of windows. We have a TWA in place with Gateway. They got the permit issued today. So we expect work to commence on this project in the next few days. And when you come in, there'll be a fake wall there as a barrier to the construction in January. Hopefully they won't be working. But let me reassure you, they will not be working when you're meeting. And with that, Madam Chair, I look forward to seeing you all in January. And hopefully when I come up in January, I will be walking straight, no limp. So,
Good deal.
thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. I had 2 items for you. The first was on consent. The second is item number 13, BCS page 10, and I think you'd received an updated memo.
If you will recall, in November, we had a preliminary budget workshop where we brought a budget to you for $64.9 million. Since then, we have had an increase of that budget to 69.4, which is a $4.5 million increase for a legislative budget request to take care of some of maybe these needed renovations and refurbishment of our district headquarters. We had presented a legislative budget request, and the governor actually put it in his recommended budget. So that's why we've come back and we've added it to our preliminary budget.
Right.
So that is the only change from the workshop that we did submit to you last month. So I'm here to ask for the approval of the preliminary budget for fiscal year 2024-2025 for $69,395,922, and authorize the executive director to make recommended adjustments as necessary to submit the standard format preliminary budget by January 15th, 2024, in accordance with section 373, 535 of the Florida statutes. And I do have a draft, and it will be posted to our website, and you will get copies next month.
Okay, sounds good. Any questions for Ms. Pam? Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion, Madam Chair.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried.
Thank
We'll take as many of those $5 million increases as we can get.
Absolutely.
Good
Madam
morning.
Chair, members of the board, good morning and Merry Christmas. Resource Management has two items for your consideration this morning. The first is item number 16, found on page BCS 15. We give you a little background. The district's been delegated the responsibility of administering and enforcing water well regulations as set forth in Part 3 of Chapter 373 Florida statutes. We do this through 40B3 Florida Administrative Code. The program includes permitting all water well construction, repair, and abandonment, and licensing and training water well contractors. Our greatest responsibility within this program for protecting public health, preventing harm to the resource, and preserving program integrity is investigating and prosecuting unlicensed water well contractors. Unlicensed water well contracting is a violation of Section 373, 336 Florida statutes, and is subject to an administrative penalty of up to $5,000 for each count or separate offense. In March 2021, an unpermitted 8-inch diameter well was found during the review of a water use permit in Gilchrist County. The well was drilled by Brandon Creasy from Hayhira, Georgia. Mr. Creasy does not hold a Florida water well contractor's license, and as a result of our investigation of this incident, he paid to have the well abandoned by a licensed contractor in lieu of the $5,000 penalty. At the time, the process for obtaining a Florida license was discussed with Mr. Creasy, but he never pursued this option. Instead, he continued drilling large diameter agricultural wells under other water well contractors' licenses, which is authorized. However, since the 2021 incident, district staff have investigated 4 more occurrences of unlicensed water well contracting and unpermitted well construction by Mr. Creasy that were done after his work performed under a licensed driller. So he basically came back after doing work under a licensed driller and did more work. Because he has unlawfully drilled large diameter agricultural wells, Mr. Creasy's actions have also negatively impacted the district's water use permitting program, agricultural cost share program, legitimate drilling companies, and the lives of producers who not only paid him to drill these wells, but then need to pay a licensed contractor to abandon them. All of Mr. Creasy's unpermitted wells failed to meet well construction criteria and have been deemed by the district to be hazards to our groundwater resource. As a result, staff recommends the full statutory penalty of $20,000 for the 4 occurrences, in addition to permanent ineligibility for licensure in Florida. So with that, the recommendation, read it, get to it, is to authorize the executive director to execute an administrative complaint and order with Brandon Creasy for unlicensed water well contracting. I'll take any questions.
Is that, go ahead.
Warren, I know you had conversation with for either documentation, communication with him on that original abandonment and so forth. Since that time, when you discovered the other 4 wells he drilled, has there been any interaction with him on that since then?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson, there has not. In fact, he apparently, most of what happens at that point is they go into hiding. The last I heard is he's incarcerated.
It's gonna be hard to collect from him.
It will be.
Well, I'm not normally in favor of enforcement issues, as you well know, Warren, but based on his habitual offenses here and the fact that he didn't try to do the right thing, I'm in favor of enforcing, authorizing your recommendation for enforcement.
A second.
That was gonna be my question is are these offenses, at $5,000 a piece, which $20,000, I mean, that's a lot of money. I mean, don't they have, counsel, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's laws to give you a point of money and it becomes a felony if you rob somebody, right? Is that correct?
Madam Chair? That's correct. I mean, I think, and I'll have to refer to counsel on a lot of this, but I think what happens at this point is I have the water well contractor community looking at the district saying, are you guys gonna follow through with your, enforcement of unlicensed contracting because it's affecting our businesses? Well, I feel like we need to do that. And what will likely happen is it will put a lien on his, any properties or whatever, but it shows that we have done our part of the process. And because he's from out of state, there may be some dealings we need to do with the state's attorney's office to send this process into Georgia and get it done there.
That's what I was gonna ask you. I mean, is there any way that if we found out that he's doing any other work, but if he's incarcerated, he can't? But the sheriff's department help us get this stopped. I mean, cause this is affecting our licensed contractors. This is affecting our withdrawal rates and everything else that we're trying to monitor. That's the whole point of us putting monitoring stations on all these wells.
Right, it is, and what I have done effectively is we communicate with our licensed contractors at least monthly and if not more frequently, and I've let it be known to them not to be hiring him to drill under their license. They all know this now, that I will come after their license for hiring a person who is effectively a hazard to the groundwater resource.
Madam Chair, if I may. The effect of this is we would issue an administrative complaint. The administrative complaint is served on him even if he's incarcerated. That doesn't matter. He's served on him. If he files a petition within the time there, that goes to DOA and there's a hearing. Otherwise, that administrative complaint includes an order, and the order says that he's, like Warren said, he's not allowed to be a licensed well contractor. He owes a certain amount of money. Now, for that to become for us to be able to execute on that and actually try to collect that money, you all would need to take a second step, which is get that administrative complaint turned into a money judgment and have the circuit judge issue a money judgment. A money judgment is what you can actually collect. That's what you can have the sheriff seize property and all of that sort of stuff. We would bring that back to you and you would authorize that before we try to convert it into a money judgment. At that point, the decision the governing board needs to make is the same decision all creditors have to make. Is the cost of going after and getting a judgment and all of that, is that worth the good that you're gonna get out of it? That's the decision that you all would have to make at that time. But the administrative complaint doesn't just automatically become a lien on property or anything else. We would have to take that next step to do that, and you all would authorize that. We wouldn't do that without the governing board authorizing.
Do you feel like if we did what you're asking us to do, is that gonna send the right message to our licensed well drillers and they're gonna receive that? You think that'd be a positive move?
Absolutely. We have heard for the last at least several years from the Florida Groundwater Association that they believe this is our highest responsibility for this program, and they've been holding all the water management districts feet to the fire on these unlicensed contractors. So I think it definitely sends a message that we're serious about it.
And the other thing we can do is the facts that we develop for the administrative complaint, we can forward those to the state's attorney's office. The unlicensed well contracting is a crime. Now, all we can do is report it to the state's attorney, they have to decide whether or not they wish to institute charges and all that, but we can certainly report it to them, see what they would do.
That might be the less expensive route. Is the-
Rather than getting a final judgment, no, yes,
Right.
ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Can that be added to our, motion that we have on the table to go ahead and let the state's attorney know
Sure.
what's going on? Would you be willing
in
to
favor of that.
amend your motion?
Sure.
Not in our district.
Oh, you want to state
Yeah,
that?
just go, yes,
Yes.
please.
Yes, to amend the motion, in addition to the recommended order to turn it over, or at least advise the state's attorney's office of our actions.
Okay.
I second it.
We have a motion, an amended motion, and 2 seconds. Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign, motion carried.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My second item is item number 17, found on page BCS 18. Recommendation is to approve environmental resource permit application number ERP 023-244-379, sequence 1, Gwynn Farms subdivision in Columbia County. The stormwater ERP authorizes the construction of 17.61 acres of impervious surfaces within a 122-acre subdivision project located approximately 1 mile east of the town of Fort White on the south side of County Road 18. The proposed stormwater system consists of 4 drainage basins that send stormwater to 4 dry retention ponds, which treat the first 2 inches of rainfall as required for discharge into a stream-to-sink basin. Projects located in a closed basin, and the design engineer has demonstrated that stormwater discharge rates and volumes will not exceed pre-development rates and volumes for all design storm events. The district received an objection to the application based on the presence of sinkholes and their concern for water quality impacts from the development. The project meets all applicable stormwater design requirements contained in sections 3.0 and 4.0 of the ERP Applicant's Handbook, Volume 2, and a sinkhole repair plan has been provided in accordance with Section 5.9 Applicant's Handbook. Therefore, staff recommends issuance of the ERP. And with that, I'll take any questions. I know there's some public comment on this.
Any questions right now? Okay.
Warren, this says the proposed stormwater system consists of 4 drainage basins to send stormwater to 4 dry retention ponds, which treat the first 2 inches of rainfall as required to discharge to a sinkhole. What happens with the rest of the water? I mean, it treats 2 inches, what is?
Right, that's the, Madam Chair, may I? That's the slug event that, if you remember when we were going through the rule changes, we were kind of going through the ERP stormwater design, and it's the slug event where the most of the oils and greases are carried into the retention pond, and that's that first 2 inches versus 1.5 for outstanding to go into an OFW or 1 inch for a standard.
This sinkhole that we're talking about, is that the main sinkhole there in Fort White that the whole city drains to?
Madam Chair, it's not for any particular sinkhole. It is for a project being built in a basin that is prone to discharge
No, but
to
I'm talking
sinkholes.
about this project.
It did, as far as I know, Mr. Keith, it did not identify any specific sinkhole. We don't allow a sinkhole to be a component of a stormwater system. We treat the water as if we know it's gonna eventually make it to one.
Then I would ask Greg, that's the area where that main sinkhole in Fort White is.
No, sir. The main sinkhole you're referring to is there in the town of Fort White. It's near the water plant. This property here is to the east.
So
It's
we'd
out
still
on
be
the
west
eastern,
of this.
it's away from that sinkhole. But it is, as Warren indicated, it's in an area that we experience from time to time, so we did the design to accommodate that, if that were to ever happen. And we do have the sinkhole repair plans that's typically used, by the district on other projects.
Okay, any other questions for Warren? Okay, at this time, we're gonna have our public comment. I've got 2 cards here. Jackie Sulik. Good morning, Miss Jackie.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Jackie Sulek, and I live in the town of Fort White, and I have serious concerns over this proposed development. So I have been in Fort White for 20 years. I did pull together a town meeting. There was a significant amount of concern from the town of Fort White. I also have the support of our local Audubon chapter, appropriately named for Rivers Audubon. So during my time here, I've learned a lot about the karstic geology. I've served on the advisory board for the water management, the North Florida water supply plan process. I've recently spent 5 years working on the Facets project through UF, and I currently represent Audubon on the Swanee River Water Management, Swanee River Partnership, excuse me. So the map provided today with today's agenda is pretty flat looking. So I don't know if these arrived into your packages, but I did provide a couple of additional maps. Were they included? So the first one was actually the Water Management District LiDAR map. And if it is in your package, it shows, Warren, was that? Okay, I did send those to Ben to forward. So, well, I will tell you, and I do have a copy here that I can share with you. What it shows is the Cody Scarp comes down, and then you have an area that's green and blue, and there's all these little blue spots, and those little blue spots, which are showing up in sort of darker areas, are sinkholes and suppressions. Sorry you didn't get your map. The other thing that it shows is there really is a connection of the water flow from this area to the Devil Springs complex. And this is a very, very, very dynamic system. So approval of this permit would support construction of 109 homes on 1/2 acre lots with 109 septic systems and 17.61 acres of impervious surfaces on these 122 acres. The home sites are scattered across the entire landscape. The town of Fort White currently has no infrastructure for wastewater, zero. So the engineering design of the stormwater system will consist of 4 dry retention ponds, they call them, using existing depressions and sinkholes. As a closed basin, by definition, any water gathered is going to drain into the groundwater through those depressions, through those dry ponds as they filter that water. And getting the water to filter the right way is going to take an extreme amount of landscaping, moving of earth. And an example of issues is there is an area being modified in the town of High Springs, and they started work and immediately a sinkhole opened. So this is a very, very fragile area. So I've spoken with Geologic Survey. People don't need to talk about sinkholes when they open up. We've seen them open and get filled. I've spoken with Wetland Solutions. I've spoken with several environmental lawyers, with the Springs folks. But I'll tell you, the most helpful conversation I had was with a retired hydrogeologist from the Water Management District. His name is Tom Greenlaw. I don't know if any of you have had the chance to work with him. And this was his observation. He said the proposed Gwen Farm subdivision is in a portion of Columbia County where the Floridan aquifer system has been determined to be the most vulnerable to contamination. LiDAR confirms the karstic nature of this area with several sinkholes and karst depressional areas on the lease's land parcel. The outstanding Florida Springs spring shed cover indicates the parcel is in the Devil's Ear Spring Shed complex. So, pollutants, including fertilizer, pesticides, termite treatment, lawn care, oil runoff, construction byproducts, and other residuals will accumulate in these unlined retention ponds / sinkholes and low areas and ultimately filter down into the groundwater in the springs. So approval of this ERP for a subdivision of this magnitude using sinkholes to protect our groundwater would be taking a serious gamble on the future of water quality in the Santa Fe Basin and the Devil's Ear Complex. This is a priority focus area as determined by the board or by staff, and this would be in conflict with the mission of the Water Management District to protect water in the area. Thank you, and I have the other map showing that this is a very, very fragile area, and I will pass that around real quickly, if you don't mind.
Maureen, would you, answer any questions maybe the board might have with the development?
Had several copies of this, and it's in this red area.
We'll pass it up now, yes ma'am.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Warren, I think I know the answer to this question. You wouldn't be standing there before us today making this recommendation if that wasn't the case, but the subdivision as proposed and the ERP permit as submitted meets all qualifications of our current rule book and so forth.
Madam Chair. Mr. Thompson, that's a correct statement. Our rule book also contains special criteria for what are called karst-sensitive areas. So those were applied here, and it requires the advanced treatment, or the highest level of treatment. I don't know if we want to call it advanced, and then the sinkhole repair plan as well.
Thank you for clarifying that. No, I have no further questions.
Okay.
Question, Chair. The depressions used may or may not be sinkhole or become sinkholes, but they're just natural depressions in the land that they're gonna use for these retaining ponds.
Madam Chair, so, I mean, I don't dispute the assertion that all this water is making it into the ground quickly. And for a typical design, Greg can back me up on this, they are looking at the lower areas to reduce the amount of earth movement they need to do on the landscape to use as their retention areas. But they are, I thought, had some lining to them. Yeah. They have to have a perk rate that does that treatment. So there may be there'll be, they're designed to have that treatment volume taken care of before the water percolates into the ground, based on geotechnical analysis that's done on the site.
Well, that was gonna be my next question. In order to treat the first 2 inches, it has to have something.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
What typically would be placed to slow the water or to line the ponds to treat the water? What typically would you see on a set of plans?
I would probably refer to the design engineer for that, to answer that question, if that would be okay.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, sir.
The first preference you want to use is natural soils. That's gonna be your best bet. If you want to start lining a pond, you're gonna line it either with, if it's soils, you're gonna line it with clay. All right, if you line it with clay, then we don't get our recovery, we don't get our percolation, there's nothing that happens. When somebody wants to dig a fish pond, they go line it because they want to hold water. They want to stay holding water, they don't want to lose the water. So that's one of the things of it. You create a wet pond. The problem with a wet pond is wet ponds don't work in closed basins because you got no discharge. You got the additional volume you gotta do, then you got a recovery problem. So in this particular case, the soil borings were done in accordance with the district rules. They were located in the retention areas that are being utilized. They indicate that there's sufficient soils in there, and the percolation rate is adequate for the design that's presented so that they recover and can provide treatment for every storm event as they typically occur in our area. So you get your recovery within the specified time frame to be able to accept the next storm, so they're not sitting there holding water for an extended amount of time. Is that?
Okay, thank you. And so part of the permit would be, it would indicate the sinkhole treatments were, if one was to occur?
That is correct.
Any other questions? All right, is there a motion? Oh, I'm so sorry. I do have two here. All right, let's see here. All right, the second one was Laura Daly.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for giving us this time. My name's Laura Daly. I live on a nice little spit of land between the Chituckney Spring Run and the Santa Fe River. Have been to many of the Fort White Town Council meetings as they have had on the Gwynn Farms subject. I want to encourage you all to two things. First, I'm going to say at a recent meeting at the Fort White City Council, our developers here were specifically asked, do you think this subdivision is going to be beneficial to the city of Fort White? The developer said, I can tell you that we're going to build to code. Couldn't tell us it would be for the benefit of the people of Fort White. The developers say water, sewer, lights, curbs, all built into the project. The builder says that's not true. If this project goes through, even with environmental resources permits finding problems with sinkholes and whatnot, the bulk of future, when the city then can provide city power, city water, city sewer, what happens to those 109 wells? What happens to those 109 septic tanks? Do they get pulled up? Do they just sit there and rot? Based on consumer reports of Adams Homes, who are the preferred builder for this project, who gets a 98% 1 star from Consumer Products and Consumer Resources because of shoddy work, below grade building, water problems, water drainage problems. They get less than a 2% 2 stars from not only the owners, 1,115 reviews from people who bought from this builder, who then was separated from the developer. The developer says go to the builder, builder says go to the developer. I think that it's critical, and you people have a tremendous and extraordinary opportunity right here, right now, to do the right thing. We can't, nor do we want to stop progress in Fort White or Columbia or Suwannee counties. But right now, we have the opportunity to do the right thing. And that's why you guys are here. We trust you to do the right thing. Do the right research. Don't leave it all the right research up to us country girls, although we will do it, because it has to be done if we're going to be leaders of how our counties change, how our communities build and develop. Where I grew up, the elders made decisions for our communities based on how it affects the next 7 generations. That's 140 years. I would encourage you to even just look at how these changes will affect our communities in the next 50 years. Water is currently more precious than gold. That is only gonna get to be more critical. We have to be the stewards here. This is our backyard. We can't say not in my backyard, but we can say not the wrong way in my backyard. And I just want to encourage you all to do the research, not just on who's coming here for the ERP. Who are going to be the followers? Who is the developer? What is their interest in our community? Is there an interest in our community at all? Or is there just an interest in the money that comes from this development? And I'm really counting on you guys to do the right thing and look at all of these. Please go to Consumer Affairs, look at Adams Homes. The builders are not gonna benefit any kind of development in Fort White as they stand. Please look it up. Don't panic, do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I do have one more question, Warren, sorry.
Get my exercise.
It's 122 acres, and there are how many lots that are gonna be on there planned?
I think, Sarah, did we have that information? I think the half acre lot was the proposal.
Half acre
About
lots?
104, I believe is what I heard.
109.
Lots. Are there, I know that we have regulations near water bodies now for an enhanced septic systems or septic tanks. Would those be applied in a sinkhole or karst area as well? Are they required?
There may be, it's not pertinent to water management
Right.
rules. But there is, there is the permit condition on this ERP that says they have to, all the other applicable permits, all the other applicable agencies they have to follow through with. It's very similar to the Woodboro situation where you had septic issues and then you had the drainage questions, and we could only really focus on the drainage at that point.
And as far as our permit, in your review, they have put in place defenses against the sinkholes and non-treated water entering sinkholes.
Yes, ma'am. This application meets all of our permitting criteria.
Okay. I don't know how we would find out about the septic tanks.
Madam Chair.
I have an answer,
Yeah,
Madam Chair.
okay, go ahead.
When a municipality annexes a certain area, most times it's on them to provide water and sewer. And at that point in time, there's an offer made, typically when the sewer gets put in, to mitigate the septic tank situation by taking on the destruction of the septic tanks by the company actually putting in the sewer system. We have something very similar in Live Oak. They would get rid of the septic tanks if they put in sewer.
Hold on a second.
And to echo what Mr. Sessions had said, I know the Fanning Springs project, which has been ongoing for a number of years, that's what they've done where they've decommissioned as systems go, as residences go online to the centralized sewer, the septic systems associated with those residences are decommissioned. They're basically pumped out, crushed, and then filled in.
Yep.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
What
So,
up?
Madam Chair, would you please walk to the podium?
Oh, yep.
So in speaking with the health department, in this particular area, these homes will require, because they're on less than 1 acre, they will require the advanced nitrogen removing systems. Unless there is a promise of immediate installation of the sewage system. As I mentioned, the town of Fort White has no infrastructure whatsoever, is looking at something, but it will serve the downtown and will not be serving this area, because I did go to the town council and say to them, why don't we wait until we're getting this infrastructure so that we're doing it the right way instead of having to rip everything up again. Now, they did go ahead and already build one of the houses, and they did not have to put an advanced nitrogen removing system because they claimed it was on 148 acres. So they just got a standard system. But for everything moving forward, it's going to require that. Now, there are a lot of moving parts to this. A lot of things have happened since these drawings were submitted. And I'm not gonna go there, but I will tell you that it might be in the best interest of the whole system to just delay the approval of this until some of these things have been sorted out. So, because the town of Fort White is very interested in expansion, but they want it done the right way, and there is the potential, and to put this magnitude of a development in an area, and I wish you had gotten the maps, because it really, you can see those little blue stepping stones right down to the river. I think it's in the best interest of everyone, probably except for the developer, to delay until some of these questions are answered. There's interest from some other opportunities that would both, well, I won't go there. Anyway, there are other options, so, thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Okay,
Madam Chair, just one comment. I think that in the testimony or the comments that have been made today, they reference some things that really aren't under the purview of this board. We're here to approve or disapprove a water use permit, of which has been vetted under our current rule book. And in my opinion, I don't think we have any option but to approve based on that recommendation.
any other comment from the board?
Question. Warren, an area like this of critical nature, are there, in our rules, are there extra precautions?
Beyond the ones I've already discussed, no, sir. But, I mean, it's, you know, the developments, I mean, just in this area, just to give you a perspective, 3-mile radius in this area, there's 6 other developments similar size that have ERPs associated with them that have been permitted. So if we want to propose any additional criteria for this kind of development in these areas, it would apply to quite a few other developments.
Didn't Fort White get a grant for a wastewater system?
I know they were talking about some interconnections in the county. I don't know about grants.
There was some springs funding allocated for the city.
The system that they're envisioning, do we know what size it is?
I'd have to get that information. To my knowledge, it has not been constructed yet, though. It's early on in
Heard about
the
any
design
construction,
phase.
But I think it's in design phase.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I think Fort White's working toward infrastructure. I would agree with the ladies, they don't have much right now, but neither does Lake City. They have a little bit, but if you talk about population versus infrastructure, they're not a whole lot of different. I'm just curious if we had special stipulation. If we're in a fragile scarp junction area, if we had special rules or anything like that this fell within.
Not beyond what we already have. No, sir.
I'm good.
All right, good. Okay. Did you have something that you wanted to add regarding the grant?
Yes, the grant is for $5.2 million, and it's to construct a spray field and a wastewater treatment plant on the south west side of town. I specifically asked if they could, this is on the east side of town, and I specifically asked if that could be built to support this development. And they said, no, this was specifically for the downtown and existing businesses, because they want a grocery store. And there is another, and that proposal is way, way behind schedule because several people left. One gentleman passed away, so that's way behind. An additional, I think, $5 million has been allocated to expand the system, and they wanted to go north to include the high school and the developments that are happening north. So once both of these are completed, I think they will accommodate something like 60 businesses in the downtown area of Fort White. Because I thought that was a great idea, a great compromise. Why, if you're gonna build this, why don't you connect right off the bat? So that's the skinny on that.
Thank you. And I know we've had subdivisions that are connected at a later date when facilities are available. I've seen that in Alachua County multiple times. All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That concludes BCS's items.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I won't be up here very long unless you have a slew of questions, but the Division of Outreach and Operations had 4 items for your consideration today. Items number 18, 20, and 21 were are for informational purposes, and item number 19 you approved on consent, which we appreciate very much. Just to let you know, cleanup efforts from Hurricane Idalia continue on district lands, and we are 98% complete and continue to hope to wrap up those last few really challenging sites. But otherwise, we're chugging along nicely.
Good. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Water Resource Division had 6 items, but similarly, many were approved by way of consent. Items 24 through 27 were approved by consent. Item 23 is in your packet for information on the projects. I did want to take a minute to thank you for the approval of the North Florida Regional Water Supply Plan. You know, that's a culmination of a lot of coordination and a lot of outreach and a lot of updates to the board, including the workshop last month. I did want to let you know that the St. John's Water Management District also approved that water supply plan, so we do have our update to the Joint Regional Water Supply Plan done. For us, that's just kind of the beginning of getting going on some of the projects that were proposed and the coordination between the 2 districts, but I think it's really important that we are coordinating with our neighbors and really trying to plan for the future. We will also be back before the board early next year to workshop the Western Water Supply Plan and then hopefully bring that to you for approval after that point. We're seeing some changes in that western region. We're going to try and reflect that when we give you that update next year. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Dr. Brown today? You're gonna let her off the hook, are you?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas, Dr. Brown.
Yeah.
From me to you.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
Well, good morning, Madam Chair and Board.
Good morning.
Thank you all for being here today. I know some of you had some challenges in being able to make the meeting today, but thank you all for doing that. A couple of things that I wanted to mention. First off, apologize for the technology or technological issues that we had relative to our microphones. We'll have that rectified before our January board meeting with it. And speaking of our January board meeting, we do want to let the board know that we will be having a workshop relative to some investment opportunities for the district. So we'll have some information pulled together for that, and look forward to discussing that with our board. Excuse me. We do not have any workshop for committee meetings today, so my items will conclude the board meeting for today unless the board has something following with it. And let you know that we do, relative to Hurricane Idalia, as was mentioned, Caitlin mentioned on our land management side of things, we do continue to work with Florida Department of Agriculture and also our communities relative to the recovery efforts going forth with it. And that'll be an ongoing effort for quite some time on there. Have had, Ben and I have been up in Tallahassee last week. Ben's up there today as well. This is the last week of committee meetings before the holidays, and then regular session will start the second week of January. But we were up last week meeting with some of our legislators, and also I was asked to be present to testify for the Environmental and Natural Resources Committee. That went very well. I was there with the other 4 other water management district directors from around the state. Thankfully, we were all confirmed by that committee. We still have 2 more committee meetings going forward, but we look forward to those and being able to present positive information about the district that we have here. And I did not fail to mention, Mr. Richard, that we were the 5th largest district in the state, but the best district in the state.
There you go.
So I was consistent with that.
The
on
truth
there.
will set you free.
Yes, sir, absolutely. With that, that's all I have this morning. Unless the board has questions, I do want to wish all of you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thankful for the many blessings that we've got. I would be remiss if I don't mention I believe they're called North Oak Pines that are in front of you here, and that you are from the district. They're our gift to you for Christmas. Thank you all very much for those, and for being here and serving on our board. And I will share with you that as a parent, I did receive one of the best blessings this weekend. We had a son-in-law join our family. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, and it was very gratifying to me during the latter part of the service and celebration. I will say that my daughter that got married came up to me and she told me, she said, "You know, Dad, that this went absolutely perfect. The Lord blessed us with great weather. Far as I know, and far as she knows, there weren't any hiccups through the ceremony, and except where I almost didn't give away the bride. My wife questioned me after. She goes, "You hesitated for a bit." I go, "Yes, I did." But it did go very well, and it's very, very satisfying as a parent, you know, for your child to come to you and say that. As a parent, you want to have that, or I do anyway. I think all of you feel the same way for your children, be able to satisfy that. But that's all I've got today. Merry Christmas.
So have you got them all married off now?
I still have one left.
One left,
She's
okay.
actually graduating on Friday from FSU.
Wonderful.
I tried, but
Tell me the son-in-law's a gator.
he is,
Thank you.
definitely, he is. And, but yeah, she's going to be graduating Friday with her bachelor's degree, and she's going to be going back to school in January to achieve another degree next year. So that's okay. She'll be in the workforce soon enough.
That's good.
Yes, sir, Mr. Richard.
Hugh, with in light of the events that's kind of transpired at our meeting today and information that has been talked about, maybe the first of next year we could talk about funding availability to some of these smaller communities in these areas that are concerned to the public and other folks about
Yes, sir.
discharge and sewer, and we've all been concerned about septic tanks, and find out what kind of money is available through spring grants or river grants to where we can help expedite Fort White's issues there?
We,
Try to alleviate some of this pressure on
certainly,
all of us.
we can have a, if you'd like, we can have a workshop, or we can have an agenda item, presentation to the board about the funding opportunities.
And maybe
The
we can get-
state has made a lot of those funding opportunities available now.
Maybe we can get that information in the right hands of the decision makers in Fort White.
Yes, sir.
Because I know that it's benefit tremendously to folks down in Fannin Springs.
It has, and some of our other communities, Lake Butler has an ongoing project as well right now. High Springs does. And so that's one of the things that Leroy with our projects team, in doing outreach with our communities, wanting to try to be the most efficient with those projects, as with, particularly with wastewater plants, as opportunities for reuse of that water are available in adjacency, then let's go ahead and plan for that as well to help offset some of our water supply concerns in those areas. And then the water quality aspect of it as well. But I know they have done a tremendous amount of outreach, but there's still more to be done in our communities.
Where is that, our Levy County, I guess, trying to get water
To Cedar
down
Key?
to Cedar Key and then the reuse back?
That effort is underway.
Okay.
In fact, there was a meeting tomorrow, or there is a meeting tomorrow, or next week?
But it got canceled.
Okay, we had a meeting scheduled for next week associated with that. But that part, we do have an agreement as far as, I'm trying to think, putting together the water authority and then also some of the design aspect. We do have an agreement in place, with the communities there. But that project is still moving forward. As you may expect, that's a large project, so it's gonna take a little bit of time, but it's being very well received.
Okay, good, that's good news.
Hugh, I had the opportunity to go to committee weeks a little bit last week as well, and talking about hurricane recovery and resiliency. And one of my issues that I mentioned to the committee is trying to have good leadership in the aspect of being more proactive as far as having good policy coming out of the legislature or whatever we're doing. But I think on that same attitude and idea is if we can, as the water management district, if we know these areas and we know that there's development pressure, which we're seeing, okay, I think it's important for us to get ahead of this as well and push this thing along to where we can have good policy coming out to where we have wise development, to where we can lay some of this stuff down and put it to rest. Because obviously, groups that are really concerned about it don't have the money to go buy these farms and pay what the landowner is expecting to get through the development for the piece of property.
Right.
Or, I mean,
Not competitive.
the public can't buy all the land, and the Nature Conservancy and everybody else can't buy all the land. It's a physical impossibility. And we can't stop the people. We can't put a gate up and tell folks from Georgia or from the Northeast or California, you can't come to Florida. We can't do that. They're
No, sir.
coming.
Growth is going to occur.
It's a great place to live in a great state, so we just need to do it in the right way.
We had some of those discussions with our legislators last week whenever I was up there, Ben and I were up there, and it is, North Florida in particular, it's a burgeoning area from a population development standpoint.
And for the record,
we need to
with you
address
two-
it.
Yeah, for the record, for you two, don't come. It's terrible. It's awful. Whoever's considering to come to North Florida, just bypass us and go to Miami.
Are you
okay?
saying we're
It's
the
a lot better
worst
in Miami.
district now? Is that what I'm
Yeah,
hearing, Mr.
We,
Richard?
we are a fantastic district, but we're full up. Okay, I just say.
I agree.
Madam Chair, I have just one comment.
All
before we
righty.
adjourn.
Yes, sir.
We approved by consent today an item, it was item number 25 with the contract with Ladida, I think he's LLC.
Ladeda, yes, sir.
Yeah. But I've reviewed that, and I'm encouraged that they are willing to participate at the percentage that they are, and that looks like a whole farm type
It is.
situation. So, you know, I'm sure that this will be used as a pilot type project to maybe further that with the other farms in our district, but, by water conservation and water quality conservation,
Our two
those two
concerns.
items are a great benefit to this district.
Two of the core missions of the district associated with that. And that particular farm, we're actually working very closely with the Department of Agriculture. If you heard any of Commissioner Simpson's speeches, he's talked about regional approaches. And for South Florida, it's relatively easy. You can, a lot of that surface water, it's costly, but you can intercept the water that has contaminants in it and treat it and then put it back out. For us, it's not as easy because of the recharge that we have that occurs in our part of the state. And so with that, you have to change the practices on the surface itself. And the commissioner realizes that, and so he's wanting to have, from a regional perspective, his regional approach, his vision for the regional approach, and I share that with him here, and I think our board does, is that we need to address those practices on the ground, and it'll be on pretty much on a farm by farm basis. And the particular farm that you're referencing there is one that is willing to look at variable rate irrigation systems, which is really optimizing from a crop production perspective, the irrigation capabilities, the control mechanisms, the soil moisture sensor capability, the fertilizer applications, and maximizing the efficiency of the fertilizer and the types of fertilizer that are used out there. So I agree with you. I commend the producer and the family there for moving ahead with that. It is a considerable undertaking for them, and so I think it'll be a pilot project for the rest of the district.
Look forward to some positive comments about it.
Yes, sir. One of the things that we do have relative to that, I've spoken with the University of Florida. As you recall, earlier this year, we actually partnered with the Department of Agriculture on doing a project for control release fertilizer technology and utilization of that in corn production and also watermelon production. Those on-farm pilot projects have been done and completed. They've compiled the data, and I'm waiting on confirmation from the university that they'll actually come and present January or February timeframe what those results look like. For the most part, I've seen the presentation at a workshop a couple of weeks ago that they had. For the most part, I think it was 11 farms that they had participating with that program. And by and large, the technology worked very well. There's some challenges, as you may expect, with that, and learning the management of that technology. And it still comes back to irrigation management relative to nitrate nitrogen and the movement of that through the soil profile, because it's very soluble. So you have to contain and control your irrigation going through there. And that's what some of the results show as well. We'll have that to look forward to soon.
Good. Any other questions for Heath? Comments? No?
All right. Thank you all very much, and Merry Christmas to you.
We wish y'all Merry Christmas, and thank you for coming today, and have a Merry Christmas, safe travels.
Thank you.
All right, yes, ma'am. All right, staff, Merry Christmas, and please spread the word. Hope y'all have a lot of family time and a good Christmas, and we'll look forward to our January meeting. Okay?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
And a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, like sign. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.